You hit $50,000 in your savings account, and for about 5 minutes you feel completely unstoppable. You look at that 5 and those 4 zeros on your banking app and you think to yourself, I have finally figured this out. I am ahead of the game. I am doing what most people never do. And you are right. You are ahead. The median savings for an Australian right now is sitting somewhere around $42,000, and that number is largely skewed by older generations hoarding cash. So, if you are in your 20s, 30s, or even your 40s with 50 grand sitting in cash, you have genuinely achieved something massive. But then, week by week, a terrifying realization starts to set in. You realize that $50,000 is a weird psychological purgatory. You are too rich to be broke, but you are too broke to be rich. 50 grand isn't enough to buy a house in any major Australian capital city without drowning in lender's mortgage insurance and stress. But it is just enough money to convince you that you deserve to reward yourself. Maybe a new car. Maybe a massive overseas trip. Maybe upgrading your lifestyle because, hey, you've got 50 grand in the bank. You can afford it, right? This is what I call the $50,000 trap. And it is the exact point where millions of Australians completely stall their financial progress. They hit this number, they freeze, they make a couple of emotional decisions, and 3 years later, they are sitting on $20,000, wondering where all the momentum went. Today, we are going to break down exactly why this trap exists, the brutal mathematics of why your 50 grand is silently dying in a savings account, and exactly, step by step, what you need to do with this money next to turn it into your first $100,000 and beyond. Let's start with the psychology. Because if you don't understand what is happening in your brain right now, the math won't matter. Getting from $0 to $50,000 requires a very specific set of skills. It requires defense. It requires budgeting, saying no to things, tracking your expenses, living below your means, and operating with a scarcity mindset. Your entire goal was just to accumulate cash and protect it at all costs. But once you hit $50,000, that defensive mindset actually becomes your biggest liability. You see, to get from $50,000 to $100,000 to $500,000 and beyond, you have to switch from defense to offense. You have to transition from being a saver to being an investor. And for someone who has spent the last 3 years obsessively protecting every dollar, the idea of putting that money into the share market, or locking it into a property where the value goes up and down every single day, is completely terrifying. So, what do most people do? They do nothing. They leave the $50,000 sitting in a high-interest savings account. They look at their 5% or 5.5% interest rate, assuming they jump through all the monthly hoops of tapping their card 5 times and growing their balance, and they think they are doing the smart, safe thing. But let's look at the real numbers, because the safe option is actually guaranteeing that you lose money. Right now, inflation in Australia is sitting around that 3.5% to 4% mark, depending on what you're buying. Let's say you have your $50,000 in a savings account paying 5.5%. At the end of the year, the bank pays you $2,750 in interest. You feel great. Your balance is now $52,750. But wait, you live in Australia. The ATO wants their cut. That $2,750 of interest is added to your taxable income. If you earn an average salary, say $80,000 a year, your marginal tax rate is 32.5 cents in the dollar plus the 2% Medicare levy. So, you are paying 34.5% tax on your interest. The ATO takes roughly $948, leaving you with a net gain of just $1,802. Now, let's factor in inflation. At a conservative 3.5%, your original $50,000 lost $1,750 of purchasing power over that year. So, when you subtract your loss of purchasing power from your after-tax interest, your real return on that $50,000 for leaving it in the bank for an entire year is exactly $52. You risked nothing. You played it safe. And you made $52, while the price of property, the price of groceries, and the price of stocks ran away from you. This is the mathematical reality of the $50,000 trap. Saving your way to wealth is mathematically impossible in the current Australian tax system. The other trap people fall into at this number is the false reward. Because buying property feels so entirely disconnected from reality for average earners right now, let's be honest, the median house price in Sydney is over $1.6 million, in Brisbane it's cracked $900,000, and in Perth it's surging. People look at their $50,000 and they realize it barely covers stamp duty and legal fees, let alone a 20% deposit. So, a dangerous psychological shift happens. They give up on the massive goal of buying an asset, and they pivot to consumption. They think, well, if I can't buy a house, I might as well buy a $70,000 Ford Ranger on finance. Or I might as well take that $20,000 European summer trip, because life is meant to be lived. They drain the $50,000 they worked so hard to build, and they go right back to the start line, stuck in the earn-spend loop for another decade. So, how do you actually break out of this? If you have $50,000 right now, what is the exact blueprint to deploy it so that you never fall backwards? Here is the step-by-step breakdown of exactly what you need to do. Step 1. Carve out the fortress. Do not invest the full $50,000. One of the biggest mistakes I see is people getting excited, moving their entire $50,000 into the share market, and then 3 months later, their car transmission blows up or they lose their job. They have no cash left, so they have to sell their shares at whatever price the market is at that day just to pay their bills. That is how you destroy wealth. The very first thing you do is take $20,000 of that $50,000 and you quarantine it. This is your emergency fund. It stays in that high-interest savings account. Yes, we know the tax math on it sucks, but this $20,000 is not designed to make you rich. It is designed to act as an insurance policy. It sits there so that you can sleep at night. It covers 3 to 6 months of absolute bare-bones living expenses if the world stops turning. If you have this $20,000 locked away, you will never be forced to liquidate your investments at the wrong time. It removes desperation from your financial life. And when you are not desperate, you make brilliant decisions. Step 2. Deploy the $30,000 army. You now have $30,000 of pure, unallocated capital. This money needs to be sent to work. And for the vast majority of Australians, the smartest, lowest friction, highest probability way to put this money to work is through broad-based index fund ETFs on the Australian Securities Exchange. We are not talking about picking individual mining penny stocks or trying to day trade tech companies. We are talking about buying a massive slice of the economy and letting the greatest wealth-generating machine in history do the heavy lifting for you. An ETF, or exchange-traded fund, lets you buy hundreds of companies in one click. A popular strategy here is a two-fund portfolio. You take a portion of that $30,000 and you buy the Australian market using an ETF like VNES, which tracks the top 300 companies in Australia. This gives you the big banks, the big miners, Woolworths, Coles, and crucially, it gives you beautiful, fully franked dividends, which supercharge your returns after tax. Then, you take the rest of the money and you buy the global market using an ETF like VGS or IVV to get exposure to the United States and the rest of the developed world, giving you a slice of Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and the massive global growth engines that the Australian market just doesn't have. Now, should you dump all $30,000 into the market tomorrow morning? Mathematically, the data says lump sum investing usually beats dollar cost averaging because the market goes up more often than it goes down. But psychologically, dropping $30,000 in one hit terrifies most people. So, the better behavioral strategy is to dollar cost average. Take that $30,000 and drip feed it into the market at $5,000 a month for the next 6 months. This smooths out the ride. If the market drops next month, great, your $5,000 buys more unit. If the market goes up, great, the units you already bought are worth more. You remove all the emotion from the process. You turn off the financial news, you ignore the panic, and you just become a relentless machine buying assets every single month. Step 3. Pull the superannuation lever. This is the one nobody under 40 wants to talk about. But it is the biggest cheat code in the Australian tax system right now. You have a $50,000 safety net and investments running in the background. This means your day-to-day cash flow pressure is actually lower than most people. So, you can afford to legally steal money back from the tax office using your super. Normally, when you get paid, your employer takes your salary and pays up to 37% or 45% tax to the ATO before the money even hits your bank account. But if you use salary sacrifice, you tell your employer to send an extra $100 or $200 a week directly into your super before tax is calculated. Inside super, that money is only taxed at 15%. If you earn $90,000 a year and you salary sacrifice $5,000 into super, you instantly save almost $1,000 in tax. It is free money, generated purely by understanding the rules of the game. Yes, you cannot touch it until you are 60, but you are building a tax-sheltered, compound interest snowball in the background that will eventually become the foundation of your retirement. And because you already have your $20,000 cash fortress and your $30,000 ETF portfolio outside of super, you can afford to lock some money away for the long term. The wealthy do not ignore super. They max it out every single year to strip their taxable income to the absolute legal minimum. Step 4. The property pivot. But what if you really, absolutely must buy real estate? Is $50,000 enough? The harsh truth is, if you want to buy a freestanding house in a capital city, 50 grand is not going to cut it. But that doesn't mean property is off the table. You have two highly effective options. Option 1 is the First Home Guarantee Scheme. If you qualify, the government allows you to buy your first home with just a 5% deposit and completely waives the lender's mortgage insurance, which normally costs tens of thousands of dollars. Suddenly, 50 grand is enough to control a $600,000 or even $700,000 property. The catch is, your mortgage repayments on a loan that big, at current interest rates sitting around 6.5%, are going to be brutal. You need a massive income to service the debt and not end up eating 2-minute noodles for the next decade. Option 2 is rent vesting. This is exactly what thousands of young Australians are doing to bypass the capital city affordability crisis. You keep renting where you actually want to live. The inner-city apartment, close to work, close to cafes, where your lifestyle is. And you use your $50,000 to buy an investment property in a high-growth regional area or an affordable capital like parts of Perth, Adelaide, or regional Queensland. You buy a $450,000 house, the 50 grand covers your deposit and costs, and you immediately put a tenant in there. The tenant pays the bulk of the mortgage, the tax office helps you out with negative gearing deductions, and you finally get a foot on the property ladder without sacrificing your lifestyle. Rent vesting is the ultimate pragmatic response to a broken housing market. It separates where you live from where you invest, and for someone sitting on $50,000, it is often the most logical path to real estate. But here is the absolute most important part of this entire process: the boring middle. Getting from $0 to $50,000 is exciting. Every milestone feels huge. But getting from $50,000 to $100,000 is notoriously boring. Your money is deployed, your ETFs are bought, your emergency fund is sitting there. And now you just have to wait. You will look at your accounts and feel like nothing is happening. The dividends will come in, and they will be small. You will get $80 here and $120 there, and you will think, what is the point of this? I should just sell it and go to Bali. This is where you cannot blink. Charlie Munger famously said, "The first $100,000 is AB*H, but you gotta do it. I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. Why did he say that? Because below $100,000, your savings rate is doing all the heavy lifting. Your deposits are what make the balance grow. Your returns are microscopic. But once you cross that magical six-figure threshold, the math completely flips. $100,000 invested at an average 8% return generates $8,000 a year in growth and dividends, without you lifting a single finger. You are suddenly earning a 2-week salary just from your money existing. From that point on, compound interest takes the wheel. The $50,000 mark is the ultimate filter. It separates the people who just want to feel secure from the people who actually want to be wealthy. The fact that you have reached this number proves that you have the discipline, the intelligence, and the drive to control your financial destiny. You have survived the hardest part of the capital building phase. You have fought your way out of the gravity of living pay to pay. Do not let off the gas now. Do not reward yourself by buying a depreciating asset that will sit in your driveway losing value every time the sun comes up. Reward yourself by buying back your future. Reward yourself by building an income stream that will eventually replace your job. Deploy the capital, build the fortress, dollar cost average the market, and let time do exactly what it has done for every wealthy person in the history of this country. If this video gave you absolute clarity on exactly what you need to do with your money right now, do me a massive favor. Smash that like button so the algorithm pushes this to more Australians who need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because we are just getting started. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.